Hello everyone and welcome to our 10th lesson. So hope you guys enjoyed the previous 9 lessons. This lesson is going to be dedicated to a follow-up of what we did last time. As you recall, last week what we looked at was free will, and in fact how we didn't have any free will at all. So this week we're going to kind of get our heads around how we can improve ourselves in order to actually develop for ourselves, or actually build ourselves a cocoon where we can have some free will. So let's touch on the point that why we don't have free will from the previous lesson, so we have a bit of a build up and an introduction to this coming lesson. Now last week we spoke about human nature, and that all of us by default, so let's take a look at that. Hopefully you guys can see that. Can you see the screen there? Okay, so by default, that's the one. So by default, okay, we're a desire to receive pleasure. Okay, this is our nature. So human nature, I guess you can all relate to that. Human nature is a desire to receive pleasure. And you all know that because every day we're running after something in anticipation that's going to make us feel good. So we want to, fulfill our desires and we want to feel happy. So we're running around all day for that. And because we're a desire to receive pleasure, this is like a software working inside of us. So this is our software. And this software is really running on all the parameters that we received from our ancestors. So all our previous generations, right? From, in fact, all the previous generations till the beginning of humankind, until the beginning of mankind, is actually all embedded in us. So every person that's born is actually carrying the essence of the whole of history of humanity. So this is generations of ancestors, okay, that we have inside of us. So all our hormones, our genes, hormones, genetic structure, everything, all our nature, all our traits are actually embedded in us from previous generations. So they're just ending up inside of us. And also, what are we? We're a desire to receive pleasure. So we are a desire machine working on traits we got from our ancestors. Right? And then we were raised in an environment, so the environment was influencing us. For example, if we were raised in, in a specific country, okay, so let's say you were born in Europe, you'd have a specific culture. If you were born in South America, you'd have a specific culture. If you were, Turkish, Chinese, Russian, you'd have a specific culture. So what happens is we got all our traits from our ancestral heritage, or from our parents, grandparents, their parents, and so on. And then we were created as a desire to receive pleasure. So those traits and the desire to receive pleasure come together. And also we're raised in an environment called, our culture, our nation. And from there we get education and our habits, okay? All our cultural behavior. So at the end of the day, once we're born with pretty much all of these things, our traits, plus the desire to receive, which is inside of us by default, plus the environment's influence on us, which gives us the culture, the education, and the habits. So at the end of the day, I'm 20 years old, and then what happens is I become a product of society. So at the age of, 18, 20, I'm already a product of this environment, product of society. Now, all my traits were from my ancestors. By nature, I'm a desire to receive pleasure. Plus, I've been influenced by the environment, so I eat the things they eat, I drink the things they drink. All my attitude towards life I got from the culture that I was born in. So it turns out, by the time I'm 18, 20, or whenever I start to build my life up, I'm going to be building all that up with what's already in me and what's been input into me without me having any say at all. We never even get to choose our name. They name us, they dress us like they please, they send us to the school they feel is fit. We're born in a country to parents. We never had anything to say in that. Nobody asked us if we wanted to be, I don't know, Japanese or Australian or, I don't know, African or whatever. Nobody asked us. We were just born. Born to a family, born in a country, born in a culture, born with certain traits from our ancestral heritage, our genes, our hormones, whatever. Plus, by human nature, we're an egoistic desire to receive pleasure. So everything that I am right now is being input into me. And therefore, I can never have any freedom of choice because I never had any say in anything. I just became a product of that environment. So there was no way at all for me to have any say in anything. And even if you look at all your friends who live, you'll see that they don't have any choice. Free choice, freedom of will, doesn't mean I can choose whatever I want from a menu. Animals also choose what to eat. But we don't want to be like an animal. So any person who's living a regular life, they don't have a free choice. They just live day to day with the occurrences of life, and that's it. And then people end up dying, obviously. They're born, they live, they die. That's it. Cats, dogs, plants, same thing. Everything has a life cycle. And everything is governed by these laws of nature that we can't get out of. So how can we even have any freedom of choice? What choice can we have? If all my personality and character are already embedded in me, if I'm by default a desire to receive, can't change that either. I'm always going to strive to be happy, and I'm always going to run away from things that give me suffering or that make me feel bad. That's not really a choice. That's just a software in me running. And it's this software we need to be aware of. Because this software is running us. All our decisions, all our calculations are based on this software where we are governed by pain or pleasure. So if we don't figure out how to work between these two things, we're never going to have any free choice. So this lesson, we're going to touch on free choice. So it's very important for you to understand that a person can only have free choice in between two exact opposite states. This is why freedom of choice can only occur and can only be in a person who has a corporeal existence, plus inside of that person exists what we call the spark in the heart or the dot in the heart. Accordingly, any person who wants to advance or wants to feel a free choice must feel the dilemma between his body or her body, in other words, the desire to receive. When I'm talking about the body, I'm not really talking about this meat and bones. Okay, desire to receive pleasure. This is called a body, actually. Our desires are called a body. Okay, so I'm either going to be in this mode, or I'm going to run after my dot in the heart, which is asking the question, what's the meaning of my life? So I have an aspiration for spirituality, to find the meaning of life. Aspiration for spirituality. Okay, I'm either going to be there or there. Now this is also not from me. This isn't mine either. This just pops up inside of us when we start to think about, why am I living? Why am I living? What's the meaning of life? That's it. The minute I've got this question and it's not non-stop, it's burning me up. It's really eating me up. It's chewing me up. I need to find a solution to this dilemma that I have. So on the one hand, I've got this dilemma. On the other hand, my desire to receive pleasure is whipping me like a horse getting whipped, running after pleasures. And the most horrible thing is, the minute we receive pleasure, the desire and the pleasure, they cancel each other out. So you keep having to run after pleasure all your life. And that's just horrific, because you just run around all your life, waste your life, you die without zero pleasure, because pleasure and desire, they cancel each other out. So I'm stuck with a big minus, a waste of life. So what can you do? Well, this is where you can start to grow, actually, in between two discernments that are completely opposite. One, he wants to get out of this world. He's just had enough, okay? Doesn't want to have anything, doesn't want anything. And also in society lately, we can see these things as well, especially in countries like Japan. Okay, for example, recently I watched a documentary on Japan where Japanese people, especially young generation, they're not going out much. They don't leave the house much. They're staying in. They're really moving towards a minimal life, not a lot. You know, they're not running around like they used to before. So we can see shifts in society globally around the world, and that's really interesting to see. Also in Scandinavian countries, you see a lot of youth. You know, they don't really want anything. Also in Australia, where there's a lot of youth problems, alcohol problems amongst teenagers. They don't really have a desire to go forward and succeed like previous generations do. It's like this new generation, the new young generation is like, you know, they just don't want things. Also in the US, we see a now trend among young generation towards socialism. I mean, who would have guessed that? The capitalist, you know, country in the world, strong in economy, wants to make sure that we completely, you know, dedicate ourselves to economic growth and advancement. And now the new generation is like all in favor of socialism, saying we should be more social country, a socialist country. So this is a huge change all around the world. Also, not just in Western societies, but also in societies like the Middle East, also in Africa as well. So this whole world right now that we're in is going through this change of skin, this change of outlook, because more and more people are now wanting to find some kind of meaning in life. Now, the real meaning in life can only occur if you're really wanting to discover the whole purpose of creation. Asking about the meaning of life isn't necessarily just, oh, why am I living? Okay, I'm having a bad day, what's the meaning of my life? Da da da. That's not what we're talking about. Meaning of life means that I am, despite I'm feeling bad, despite the fact that I may be feeling bad, not that I'm feeling bad, I may be feeling bad, or despite the fact that life might not be so great on the corporeal level, I have this yearning desire to discover why we're living, what's the meaning of life. I mean, I'm going to live my life through and I'm just going to end up dead, and it looks like it's just a big waste. There's just it doesn't appear like there's a point behind it. So this question about the meaning of life needs to be very strong inside a person who wants to study the wisdom of Kabbalah, because the wisdom of Kabbalah really explains everything about the secrets of creation. So Kabbalah is the science that we can really tune ourselves into to discover the answer to all these questions. So only if I've got these 2 points, the dot in the heart, which is yearning for the meaning of life. Why am I living? My life is just going to go by like this, and I'm going to end up dead like my parents, my grandparents, their parents, and it's just like nothing. And then on the other hand, I've got this desire to receive as a nature keeps making me run after things that I don't even want. Why? Because half the things, well, more than half the things, 90% of the things I did in life was mostly not because I wanted to do it, but the society made me do it. The way I got dressed, the food I ate, the job I got, the wife I married, everything was just under the influence of society. So it comes to a point that you look at yourself, you look at your life, and you think, where am I? Who's the guy who's supposed to live his own life? And you won't find anything of that guy because he never even existed. We were just raised in society like puppets under the influence of that society. And that was it. But now, with a dot in the heart, this is a crucial point. Only a person with a dot in the heart has a strong yearning. Okay? So this dot in the heart, the aspiration for spirituality, plus the stress that we're going in this life in corporeality, the meaningless of it, allows me to start to be born. Because now I am right in between these 2 points. And between these 2 discernments, I can now start to think about doing something. Exactly at this point, I can have free choice. Exactly now, I can decide whether I want to go after this or whether I want to go after this. And that decision point can only be in between. Any decision can only be in between 2 points, 2 opposite points. Bitter and sweet. Ugly, beautiful, good, bad, day, night. Everything is in between 2 opposite points. And that is the location where a Kabbalist seeks. And this is where he is absolutely, or she is free. I'm free from the influence of the dot in the heart, because that doesn't belong to me either. It just popped up inside of me. The dot in the heart is actually what we call in Kabbalah the part of the Creator that is embedded in us. And then all my bodily attributes from my ancestors, society, education, culture, media, all the junk I took, all of a sudden, what am I? A genetic junk box. Fed with culture, fed with education, all kinds of things, and I am now an outcome of society. So this outcome of society, this product of materialism, okay, outcome, product of society, and this yearning to get out of this state, get out, the yearning to get out, yearning to get out, allows me to come to a discernment in between these 2 points. And that's the point where you can build yourself. And that's the point where you can call yourself, that's me. Okay? So if the real you ever needs to stand up, that's where you're going to find it. So let's take a look at this lesson and let's see how we can build that freedom. Before we go on to building that freedom, we first have to understand what we're made of, how we are made, what human nature really is. Not just human nature, but also the whole of reality. And that is crucial for us to understand if we ever want to know why we do the things we do and why people do the things they do. Sometimes you look at people and think, why would you do that? Why would he or she do something like that? Well, it's because we're just not understanding how human nature works. We don't understand how nature works. So we can't really fathom, understand, and really comprehend what's going on towards us and what's going on between people and what's going on in this world. So let's take a look at our 10th lesson and start looking at the things that we need to learn. Now, in reality, there are 4 factors that we need to take a look at and we need to understand for us to get our heads around what a human being is. So we're going to look at those one by one. And the first thing is something called a source. All right, actually, let's start like this. 4 factors. Okay, and the first factor is the source. Now, when we're talking about the source, we're talking about our essence, which we don't really feel, by the way. However, although we don't feel it, everything in life has an essence, because it's from that essence which we develop. Everything in nature has that essence. The still level, the moon, the sun, the planets, you name it. Plants, animals, us, everything. So by looking at one example, we can actually decipher the essence and how the essence of anything works in life. So the source is the essence. It's our essence, the essence of life and reality. All right. So the essence of anything equals information. Now, in spirituality, or in reality, actually, information, well, you know what they say? You know, they say information is power, right? Well, exactly so. In our essence, there is the information that will make something out of us. And all the information that is needed for us to become something or someone is embedded in that essence. So, for example, in a grain of wheat, okay, all the information about that wheat is in that single particle, that single grain of wheat. From that wheat, you can't get barley, you can't get wheat, you can't get apples. It's got to be wheat. And in that little seed, all the information is present for it to grow, for it to multiply, and for it to continue its generation. So the essence of anything is that beginning point of information that contains everything. And same with us too. We all come from what? A drop of sperm. That's it. All the information from our ancestors come in that little drop. And that little drop carries our essence. And inside it, it carries all the information that is needed to make us as adults. Everything is in there. So is with the seed, so is with an animal, so is with the whole of reality. From the essence of any particle, we can say that the foundation and the development is the same for everything in creation. So this understanding of the source is very important. So just like a seed, we're also a seed. We come from our parents, our father and our mother. One drop from our father, one from our mother, and together they make that embryo inside that womb. And that embryo contains everything that we could and we shall be. Pretty much our destiny. It's written out. It's interesting to know that, because once you also realize that you have all these traits from your ancestors, that all your personality, character, everything you can do, your inclinations, once you understand that this is all coming from a preset software, a preset equation, then you begin to understand, well, what's my role in all this? And then as you study the wisdom of Kabbalah, you understand that as a regular person, you have absolutely no role, because there's really nothing of you in reality. This is why the dot in the heart is very important, because now we're going to talk about the essence of spirituality as well, just like the essence of our corporeal life. So this source is very important. It is the essence of everything. It is the seed, and it carries that information. From that information, our potential is already planned, programmed, and will eventuate under the right conditions. So what are those right conditions? Well, we did mention a minute ago that the environment that we grew up in turned us into a product of that environment. Okay, this is something marketing people know well. Why? Because you're constantly feeding us with advertising, and advertising and media is an environment that's influencing us to want the things that we really wouldn't really care about. So we become a product of the environment. The phone we choose to buy, the influence of the environment, the influence of my friends. What do they have? What's popular? All these things are all an influence on us. So that source that initially we're born with is always influenced by environment. So the source is very important to know, first of all, because we are now, just like we had no choice in our corporeal surroundings. We had no choice about selecting our parents, our country, our environment, and nothing. No choice at all. And we just were born and we grew up and then we died. That's it. So the source is very important because we need to understand that there we've got no choice. Nothing. Okay? So that's the first thing to know. The second thing is the source's development. So once we have this, you know what, let's draw it here as well. So what did we have? We have here a seed, right? Let's make a seed here. Let's say it's a seed of wheat. Okay, it's a grain of wheat or something of that nature. Okay, so we put it in the ground, and this seed has all the information inside it to become what it's supposed to become. That's it. Same with us. And then we've got the source's development. Now, how does the source develop? Sources development. How does the source develop? Well, how does a seed develop? A seed develops by minerals. So here we need to have minerals. We need to have some kind of humidity. We need to have sun. We need to have rain, water, so that this seed can grow. Okay? Otherwise, it's not going to grow at all. If we plant it in the desert, it's not going to grow. So in order for this seed to grow, it needs a proper environment. And that's the critical thing here. Sources development depends on the environment, because I could be the greatest essence of anything, but if I'm not in the right environment, it could be the best fruit seed on the planet, but you plant me in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Am I going to grow? No way. So that's very important to understand, that the source's development is dependent on its influence by the environment. So the environment is critical for this seed. Okay, environment is very critical for this to grow. So we need the minerals in the soil. We need the water. We need the sun. We need someone actually taking care of the plant, because there are going to be weeds around. So if I'm a farmer, I can't just let things grow. I need to make sure that the rice field or the field for the wheat or the trees, they need to be looked after. I need to clean the weeds. I need to make sure that the water is flowing in there properly, to make sure maybe I need some, fertilizer. All these kind of things I have to take into consideration. So we even need a caretaker. Let's put that in the environment as well. A caretaker. All right, so that's just a farmer. There you go. So all these factors are very important, and they influences the source's development. So these are very important thing to know. Okay. Now, what else do we have? So the source's development, although it's influenced by the environment, we have to also understand, what do we have? We have a software. Okay? The source's development, actually, let's make this the environment. Okay? And let's talk about this first. The software, just like we've got our software. Now, a minute ago I said from a wheat, only wheat will grow. No corn, no barley, no apples, right? So the software is already embedded in the essence, which already has in it the chain of development. And that's already all in this seed. That information is already in there. Okay? Critical information. Then we've got environment. Now, environment here, oops, let's actually make that black as well. Okay. Now, the environment here is simply factors that influence my growth. Just like here we said, the humidity, the minerals, the sun, the rain, okay, rain, all these kind of things. Environment means factors affecting my growth, factors that influence my development. So as you can see, so far, if we compare this to a human being, we're the same as a seed, any seed. So the environmental factors that influence my development are very important because I rely on them if I want to grow and become a fruit-bearing tree. There we go. So all the factors that influence us, same for humanity as well. And the fourth thing is also an environmental matter, but factors irrelevant specifically for my development. For example, okay, this stalk of wheat can be run over by a truck. Now the truck has no influence on its development, but the truck just killed it. Okay, so it's not a direct influence on how it develops, but it does have an influence on its existence, such as our lives as well. Imagine, I don't know, God forbid, all of a sudden we're walking down the street and I don't know, a rock falls on our head or something, right? So the rock doesn't directly relate to our development, but it does affect our life, whether we live or whether we die. So there are certain circumstances that are irrelevant, well, not irrelevant, but non-impacting, let's say. They're not really impacting and influencing our development as a person or as a plant or whatever. Anything that develops is always developing in that environment, the influence of the environment. So as far as there are factors that are directly not influencing my capacity to grow, to be better, or to reach my potential, but do have influence on my existence, are called factors irrelevant specifically for my development. Okay? They're not relating really directly to my source, to the essence of my essence. So these factors are also existing in life, and our life is exactly like that seed. You plant it in a nice place, you get some fruitful trees. You plant it in a bad place, you'll get nothing. This is why also we instinctively try to tell our children to make good friends. Why? Because we instinctively understand that good people will not bring bad things. And this information is also inside of us. Why? Because it's a law in nature. Tell me who your friend is, I will tell you who you are, as they say. So the influence of the environment is very critical for our development, because we also have a seed inside of us that we need to develop. And guess what that is? Yes. That's us. And this is our little dot in the heart. You know, in fact, I should draw this like this. It should be a bit more responsible and a bit more realistic. The dot in the heart really is a dot in the heart. It is minute. That's how it is. Okay? That's the dot in the heart. I'll just put a bit of bracket around it so you can discern it. This doesn't belong to us at all. Although we live in this body, I had nothing to do with it. It's just a product of the environment. The dot in the heart is also a part of the Creator which is inside of us, which is yearning to get back to its source, which is the Creator. And I am at odds in between these two. Now I can make a choice. Why? Well, where is choice? Just like we plant a seed in a good environment, choice is also putting ourselves in a good environment. So it all depends on what I want. What do I want? If I want to get spiritual, then I want to put myself into a spiritual environment. A spiritual environment. If I want corporeal pleasures, if I want, I know, family, food, sex, money, honor, knowledge, all the worldly, corporeal pleasures. Okay, let's call it worldly pleasures. Let's make it red, shall we? Let's make it a different. There we go. Worldly pleasures. So I have to be in worldly environment, don't I? You see, if I want to get rich, I can't hang out with a bunch of losers, because I'll never get rich if I hang out with a bunch of losers. If I want to get rich in life, I need to hang out with rich people, and I need to hang out with people who also want to get really rich, so that I can influence myself to also get rich. That's critical, because the environment will influence me. If I'm around lazy people, then I'll end up being lazy. If I want to get rich, I need to be around people who also have a big drive to get rich. If I want to be a good athlete, I have to hang out with the best athletes in my profession. If I'm a soccer player, I've got to be with the best, because in that environment specifically, I can develop and become really good. If I want to be a scientist, I don't want to hang out with football players if I want to be a scientist. Why? Because, well, I'll end up being dumb like them. A scientist wants to discover the world. Those guys want to run after a ball. So what you got to do if you want to be a scientist, if you want to have knowledge and the power of knowledge, you got to hang out with the best scientists on the planet. You got to go to the best universities, hang out with the best academics. You got to read the articles and the books that the scientists, really top guys, wrote about, so you can suck everything in, get everything, and start researching and doing more and more and becoming the best at that. You have to surround yourself with influences that will drive you, push you, motivate you, inspire you, give you a desire to get to that outcome. Because we are a desire to receive pleasure, and we will only do things if that desire is big and alive and it's yearning. And the only way to keep it alive, burning and yearning, is to add to your initial desire a bigger influence from others which are like-minded and want the same things as you do. This is why environment is the only place where you can make a choice between spirituality and corporeality. So as far as corporeality, I mean, we don't have a lot of desires. What do we have? Food, okay, sex, family. Not a lot of people have even a desire for family nowadays. Okay, so these are our corporeal existence. Okay, we exist because of these. We have to eat to live, right? Sex is to give birth to the new generation, and family is kind of our surrounding, our security for ourselves. But in the 21st century, we even said, you know what? Forget it. It's just a problem even to have them around us. That's, however, these desires are initial. They're necessary for the existence of life. And then we've got social desires, like we learned in our previous lessons, like money. Okay? If we were living isolated in some tropical island, we wouldn't really have a drive to get rich, because I know what to eat. I know, my diet is what's on the island, and I probably have a nice little cave or a hut. Okay, and I'm probably, by the beach every day, trying to get a nice tan, relaxing, and I'm only going to be eating when I'm hungry. Just a very basic, simple life. I'm not going to be really yearning to get rich and do all kinds of crazy things to earn money, simply because I don't know about it. I don't have a desire for it. So social desires means that the society is showing me things, and because they show me things, I want what they show me. And if I hadn't seen it, who cares? I would never have wanted it. But now that I see what others have, I also want what they have. So we have a drive for money, power, and knowledge. And these are social desires. These are desires we get from the environment. And the food, family, sex, these are desires we get because it's in the animate level. It's even in the plants and the still level as well. Okay? Plants also mate. Animals also mate. This is how they reproduce the next generation. Same with us as well. Our actually corporeal existence is called the life of an animal. Because at the end of the day, just like an animal is born, lives and dies, we are born, we live and we die. So we could actually call this the beast. Well, let's make it a little interesting lesson and give it a nice name. Okay, the beast. Or it can be called the animal. Sometimes Kabbalists like to call it the donkey. All right, which is our desire to receive pleasure, roaming around the planet, wanting to get fulfilled with all kinds of desires such as these. And then it just, what happens to it? Well, at the end of the day, it goes to a place called a cemetery where it can rest in peace. There you go. That is the end of it all. And that's the story of this animal. Okay? So if we have a dot in the heart, however, there's a different story. Now we want to yearn to attain something beyond this world. And that desire to go beyond this world is called attaining the attributes of the Creator. Or you can call them Allah, God, Elohim, light, Creator, one force, the upper force, doesn't really matter. In reality, there is just one force. And spirituality is to connect with that force. And to connect with that force is exactly what builds us. So from that initial trigger called the dot in the heart, which is just an inclination for spirituality, we begin to develop, grow, and build ourselves to become a spiritual entity while living in this life. Contrary to religions, we have to do everything while we're living in this life. And I've got some good news for you. After you die, nothing happens. Okay? So you shouldn't wait for anything to happen when you die. Everything must happen while you live right here. I know it's a bit depressing, but what can you do? We've got a job to do here. And the whole purpose of this reality, the existence behind, the reason behind the existence of this reality was to actually achieve the highest level of consciousness from the lowest level of consciousness, which is our life here, is the same as the life of an animal or a donkey. So in between these two discernments, you can build something called man. Or if you're a woman, whoa man. Okay, how's that? Which, in short, the human level of existence is living here in similarity to the Creator. Human means like the Creator. There we go. Okay, so this is the Creator, endlessness, and what we'd like to do is exist just like Him, and to exist like Him is called the state of human. So in spiritual books or in religious books, sometimes they call, when they mention human, man, and so forth, they're not talking about this meat and bone that we're living in. Because at the end of the day, this meat and bone is just like an animal, dies off. So a person needs to develop a higher level of consciousness that matches the consciousness of the Creator. And that matching of consciousness allows us to exist in His reality rather than existing in an animate reality. And therefore, when our animate level dies off, because we exist in a higher level of consciousness, we do not die. How does that work? Well, that works like this. It's also in nature like this too. Now think about it. In nature, there's the still, vegetative, animate, and human levels. It's like a pyramid, isn't it? Okay, that's the pyramid we've got. That's the still level, vegetative, animate, speaking level. Okay, still, vegetative, animate, speaking. And here is the human level. Human, as in I just described, similar to the Creator. Now, unless we reach that level, unless we reach this level up here, we can't really talk about humanity. And I'll tell you why. In our bodies as well, we have, what do we have? We have the still level, right? Our bones belong to the still level. And then we have the vegetative level also. Our hair, our nails, they grow. They belong to the vegetative level. And then we've got the animate level, which is our meat, okay, this flesh and bone, this body is called the animal. And then we have the speaking level, which is our intellect, the thought process that we have, how our intellect works. Now, human is a level above the speaking level. This is why when we're not in the human level, we do not understand human psychology. All right? So what do we have in the speaking level? We have our psychology. And why don't we understand human psychology? Because you can't understand yourself at your current level. You can only understand what's below you. So we understand animals, we understand biology, we understand plants, we understand botany, we understand the still level, we understand physics, chemistry, astronomy, whatever. We understand those things because they're below us, but we don't understand our life. We don't understand why things happen to us the way they do happen to us. We have no clue at all because we're at that level of existence here. So it's a big fat question mark. So to resolve all that question mark, we have to attain a higher level of consciousness, which is called godliness. Okay, which is the same thing as attaining the thought and the understanding, obviously, of the Creator himself. For us to do that, we're going to need an environment. And believe me, we're going to need a really strong environment. And that's where a good Kabbalistic group comes in handy. Okay. So if you want to build yourself and to attain that higher level of consciousness, what you now have to do is to stick this dot in the heart inside an environment where you can get it influenced for its spiritual development. Let's call it a spiritual environment. So what we want to do is to impact that dot in the heart from all sides to make sure it grows. We just want it completely immersed in light. Light meaning wisdom, elevation, understanding, sensations that are beyond corporeality. So we can start to exit this sensation of the body and actually have an additional sense called a soul, or your sixth sense, additional to this 5 sensory organs that we have. Now, having said that, the spiritual environment consists of books that we study so we can learn about spirituality. We need to learn and discover all our nature. Now, books, when we're talking about spiritual books, we're talking about Kabbalistic books, right? A spiritual environment means a Kabbalistic environment for us because we're students of Kabbalah. Kabbalistic environment. Now, Kabbalistic environment means books, and I'm talking serious books. I'm talking about books that were written 2,000 years ago describing to us that the perception of reality only exists inside man's mind, which, by the way, scientists are newly beginning to discover in the 21st century. Wouldn't that have been great if we knew all that 2,000 years ago? Yes. So we need some good books that talk about reality and how true reality really works. How can we know that? Well, we can only know that from good, authentic sources. So we need to have authentic sources of Kabbalah where we can influence ourselves with the knowledge, the wisdom. And then we're going to need a serious guide, okay? Sometimes known as the Rav. Now the Rav, or the guide, or the teacher, needs to guide us properly, just like kids need to be guided as they're growing up, or teachers guide us in school so that we can become sophisticated enough to live our own life by ourselves as we grow up in this reality. A Kabbalistic Rav or a Kabbalistic teacher guides the students so they can learn in order to exist in the spiritual realm. And that's very, very important because you need the right guide to interpret the books correctly so you can actually get the max benefit in order for your speedy development. Because the last thing you want to do is carry on also with the shackles of this world dragging you down. So good Rav, good books, and obviously the most other important thing is a good advice for everyone in the world is actually what? Good friends. Okay, you're going to need really good friends in this business. Good friends. And the beautiful thing is people who come to Kabbalah, generally, if they're good and serious about the meaning of life, they're really fun people. And you get people from all walks of life. And it's really interesting to meet people from all around the world. I know from Africa, from Japan, the Philippines, Russia, China, Turkey, Iran, America, Europe, everywhere. You got friends everywhere, South America. They're all over the place. Australia, New Zealand even. All right, who would have thought in the land of the sheep you'd get someone spiritual? But they do pop up every now and then. Anyway, these people from all walks of life, they're just amazing when you meet them and you discover that what you've been through is actually so similar, and in fact, in most cases, so exact to what they've been through. It's like you guys have been living the same thing in different parts of the world. So it's a very, very interesting group of people. And when these specific people come together from all different backgrounds, something really amazing happens because they all have a dot in the heart. So good friends are necessary so that my dot in the heart has now company, has the company of other dots in the heart. And this is very, very important because spirituality is going to be attained in an environment that's influencing your dot in the heart, because that dot in the heart is only an inclination. And from that, we're going to make a soul. All right? I think we've got 2 questions. I am so sorry I got carried away. So good friends, the Rav, and the books. Before I go into those questions, what do I do with my normal life? What am I going to do? Just chuck it in the garbage? Of course not. Spirituality is something we're adding to our corporeal life. So I do exist in my corporeal level of existence, right? I'm not shutting myself down. I'm not going to go up onto a mountaintop or hide myself in a monastery and get spiritual. No, we have a regular life. Our life is quite exciting even in regular lifestyle. Okay, so I've got the regular life as well. What does that mean? Well, that means I've got a job. Ooh, that's not nice. I've got family. Okay, family, kids. That's nice. That's nice. So we've got nice things there as well. So I've got, I don't know, everything that's also in corporeality as well. I've got my job, health, all these things. They belong to the corporeal world and we need to keep them. We're not throwing them away. We're keeping our regular life. But on our regular life, what we want to do, like a person who wants to attain a new ability, like if I want to now learn how to play a musical instrument, I add to myself spirituality. Okay? So on top of my corporeality, I add spirituality. And now I have 2 things in me. Things that relate to corporeality and corporeal desires and a corporeal environment, because at the end of the day, I'm also going to be a part of this environment. So I've got this environment influencing my corporeality, and I've got this environment influencing my spirituality. Okay? So now I've got 2 lines. I've got 2 sides. I've got the day and the night. Everything together. Okay. Now that was a bit fast. If I went too fast, let me know. I'm happy to answer all kinds of questions. Not to mention, I'm happy to explain everything all over again if it's not understood. Right then. I've got a question from Marlon. We can choose our environment. Yes, we can. If I have a dot in the heart, this is very important. This is why I mention it's critical, because the dot in the heart is something that's, that wants to get spiritual, has an inclination for spirituality, has an inclination for a meaning behind life. My corporeal desires are all related to desires of this world, things that relate to this world. So if I have 2 different desires which are opposing each other, I can now choose the environment that will influence whichever one I choose. And that's where my freedom of will is, really. Because all the other desires that relate to corporeality, they're still corporeality. I live in this world, I get old, die. And that's with a good, that's on a positive term. A lot of people die even earlier. We have all kinds of catastrophes, wars, all kinds of things. So spirituality is now a second option. So in between these 2 options, this world or the spiritual world, I can now start to make a discernment. Okay. And also Marlon's asking, is it us that chooses to watch this study Kabbalah, or is it the upper force guiding us? Well, if you have a dot in the heart, it's simple. That's a very nice question. If you have a dot in the heart, okay, what's the first thing this dot in the heart does? It says, let's say this is, actually, you know what? This is the real Marlon, right? This, I've got your name right. This is the real Marlon. And this is the temp. Okay, that's the temp Marlon. It's just hanging out. Okay, now when we have this dot in the heart, this dot in the heart wants an answer to its questions. So it starts to search. So the real Marlon first begins to search. The real Marlon wants to go into things to find out. Maybe you went into all kinds of religions, all kinds of mystical things, meditations, I don't know, you name it, all kinds of things you thought were spiritual, and that would give you the answer to the meaning of Marlon's life. During that search, people also come across Kabbalah. And that's how it is. Beyond that, whether you want to study or not, that's a different question. Because once you come to the wisdom of Kabbalah, then you also, just like other wisdoms, you're going to have to make a decision. Do I want to study it or not study it? Real decision really starts when you start to put some work into it in spirituality. But it's like that with everything. If I want to, for example, do something spiritual, a spiritual method, okay, I have to get into it. I have to discover it, and then I have to say to myself, well, look, this is not answering my questions. If it is answering your questions, you'll stay in there. If it isn't, you'll say, I need something else. So same with Kabbalah. If a person's searching on one of those quests, he or she will come to the wisdom of Kabbalah. According to the answer you get to your question, you'll either want to stay or you'll go. That there is not free choice. That's not free choice yet. That's the system working on us. Because the dot in the heart awakens. Now there are two things in you. You are looking to fulfill both of those desires. The dot in the heart is also a desire. It's a desire for spirituality, but it's still a desire. So you got your corporeal desires, and you have your dot in the heart, and you want to bring, now you got both of them, and you want to fulfill them both. The roaming, the searching to fulfill them both is not yet freedom of choice. It is still seeking fulfillment for a desire that has opened up in you. When you begin to enter the wisdom of Kabbalah, and then you begin to go against your nature, against the grain, that's when you're going to start talking about freedom of choice in practice and in practical application. So the dot in the heart is a prerequisite, plus the prerequisite is also to stick your head in a spiritual environment so that you can influence it. Then, according to that influence, you're going to start making choices. You're going to start making choices about whether I want to stay here or not stay here, whether I want to go against the grain, whether I want to go against my nature and to become something completely different or not. All these decisions, discernments, evaluations, feelings, the confusions, the ups and downs, the shakeology of it all is all going to be when you're in the study, and then we can talk about free choice. Right then. Are there any other questions? Okay, so there were 2 questions, and I think we've answered them. Let me just see what else I can do for you guys. So we've talked about the environment. Let's read a little bit, okay? So let's read from the sources and let's see what the Kabbalists say. So we're going to read from the book Kabbalah for the Student, which is over there, but we'll look into that book later. On page 383, there's an article called The Freedom, and Baal HaSulam is the writer of that article. And this is what he says. He says, we can always supplement in the matter of choosing our environment, which are the friends, books, teachers, and so on. It is like a person who inherited a few stalks of wheat from his father. From this small amount, he can grow dozens of stalks through his choice of the environment for his source, which is fertile soil, with all the necessary minerals and raw materials that nourish the wheat abundantly. There is also the matter of the work of improving the environmental conditions to fit the needs of the plant and the growth. For the wise will do well to choose the best conditions and will find blessing. And the fool will take from whatever comes before him, and will thus turn the sowing to a curse rather than a blessing. Thus all the praise and spirit depends on the choice of the environment in which to sow the wheat. But once it has been sown in the selected location, the wheat's absolute shape is determined according to the measure that the environment is capable of providing. So is the case with our topic. For it is true that the desire has no freedom. Rather, it is operated by the above 4 factors. And one is compelled to think and examine as they suggest, denied of any strength to criticize or change as the wheat that has been sown in the environment. So as you can see, we humans are the same. We enter an environment, you become influenced by it. You begin to act like the people there. This is why they have like corporate culture. Even corporate culture in business. You enter a company, they have a certain corporate culture, and you start acting like that. In a previous company, you were working in some other corporate culture, completely maybe even different to this corporate culture. But now you're here, you get molded into it. And people behave in that way, and you start also to behave in that way. So Baal HaSulam says, listen, according to your choice in environment, you develop, and that's the only choice you've got. And also in the beginning of the environment, it's very important to understand that we can always supplement in the matter of choosing our environment. That means we can always add to increase the influence of the environment upon ourselves. And that's also a critical factor in freedom of choice. Because being in an environment is one thing, but doing your max to get its influence on you, now that is your action, and that actually becomes a point of independence, because you're physically, mentally, spiritually, with all your essence, with everything you've got, acting in that environment to really suck up all those minerals like the seed in a fertile soil in order to grow. And that's actually causing the speed of development. So the speed of development really depends on how much you stick your head in and be active in that environment so you can grow. And that's freedom of choice. So we have to, in spirituality, build an environment and a right environment and a correct environment, and constantly make that environment even better. And that's where our free choice is, to constantly improve it, to make it better, to supplement it, to feed ourselves, to nourish ourselves better and better. Right? Okay. No other questions so far, but I'm happy to take on any questions you've got. This is one of my favorite topics, by the way. The freedom, let's read a little bit more. Page 383 and 84. Therefore, let's take that from the beginning. There is freedom for the will to initially choose such an environment, such books and such guides that impart to him good concepts. So choosing the right books are critical, because if you choose the wrong books, look at what happens to humanity. All right? People get into all kinds of methods, religions. They go in there, they start reading some books, and they come out psycho. So choosing the right books is like critical. Okay? If one does not do that, but is willing to enter any environment that appears to him and read any book that falls into his hand, he's bound to fall into a bad environment or waste his time on worthless books, which are abundant and easier to come by. All right, so you go to a bookshop today, there are 4,500 religions on the planet. Imagine how many books there must be about all of those methods. So it's like a junkyard out there. In consequence, he will be forced into foul concepts that make him sin and condemn. All right, so this is what we see in many religions as well, right? People stick their heads into all kinds of methods. And, you might even have friends who went into such studies. And they were really nice people, and all of a sudden they got in there, they come out completely wacko. Or sometimes they were wacko, and they go in there and they come out something good. So what does that tell you? That tells you the influence of the environment. Okay? So it could be good or bad. So people have to be very selective about the environment, just like you're very selective about your partner in life. You're very selective about your good friends in life. So a person, anyone who wants to develop nicely, has to look and make sure this environment is good, it's facilitating, it's nice. He will certainly be, okay, let's read that again. So in consequence, he will be forced into foul concepts that make him sin and condemn, and he will certainly be punished, not because of his evil thoughts or deeds, in which he has no choice, but because he did not choose to be in a good environment, for in that there is definitely a choice. Because once you enter an environment, you're consumed by the thoughts in that environment. So it's very critical for us not to be consumed in that environment, but to actually have a good environment which is bringing us growth according to spirituality as the method you choose for yourself. Okay? When I say a certain method or whatever, there are good environments and there are bad environments for everything in life. A person, Baal Islam here is just saying, listen, you can only make a choice in the environment, because once you get in there, that's it, you're influenced by them. So there's nothing you can do once you're in there. It's like done deal. Therefore, he who strives, or she, to continually choose a better environment is worthy of praise and reward. Why is he or she worthy of praise and reward? Because they're constantly getting better, because they chose the right environment, a good environment, so they're constantly developing in a positive way. And that's the reward, actually. But here too, it is not because of his good thoughts and deeds, which come to him without his choice, but because of his effort to acquire a good environment, which brings him these good thoughts and deeds. It is as Rav Yeshua ben Parachaya said, make yourself a Rav and buy yourself a friend. So choosing the right friends, the right teacher, the right books, and to integrate yourself into that environment is critical in your spiritual development. And without that, it's not going to happen. We can also see that with children. If we don't put them in a good school, why do we worry so much about their schooling? Why do we say, we've got to put them in a good school, in a good environment and so on? Because we don't want bad things to happen to them. Same with us. We also need to take care that if we want to develop spiritually, we have to put ourselves into a good spiritual environment. Just like we do to our kids, we have to take care of ourselves in our spiritual development as well through the environment. And that's it, basically. Are there any more questions? No. Okay. So at the end of the day, let's wrap it up. Okay, so let's wrap it up. At the end of the day, a person consists of two things in life. His worldly corporeal life Okay, if you can show the board, please. There we go. So you got your corporeal life. Okay, let's be positive. Okay, that's your corporeal life, and this is your spiritual urge to find the meaning of life. So at the end of the day, what you have to do is maintain your corporeal life. So you maintain this life. You don't have to give up anything if you're studying Kabbalah. You maintain your corporeal life with the things you do. Family, I don't know, work. If you've got hobbies, do your hobbies. If you're a musician, play your music. No problem. You maintain your life. But what you want to do, on top of that, you want to add some meaning of life. Oops, meaning. Let's just get our spelling right. What's going on with me today? Meaning of life. So what you have to do is, just like you have an environment here with family, friends, work, health, things that relate to your corporeality, you also need to build here something spiritual, which is called a guide, a spiritual environment, a guide, books, and also friends. And also if you've got family who study with you as well, isn't that great? Family. You can even have your family here. Most of us have our families studying as well. There we go. Therefore, what you do now is you bring your life, both of them, together. Okay? And you make one life for yourself. There you go. And that's it. And that is how we study the wisdom of Kabbalah. And if you choose to be with us, this is called B'nai Baruch. B'nai Baruch. Sometimes we call it BB. And there we go. Bondi Beach, kind of. Okay, BB. B'nai Baruch. So our spiritual environment is like that. We have a guide. We've got the Rav. We've got the books. Like with the books we talked about in the previous lessons, the books of authentic Kabbalah. And then we've got friends who are also very, very fueled up, jacked up, ready to go, flaming to find spirituality, which is actually understanding the whole of life while we exist here, and to actually live at that highest level, at that pinnacle of human development, which is to become like the Creator and act actively in reality just like He is. So just like kids grow up to be independent in this reality, in our corporeal life, we should grow up to be independent and governing our spirituality as well. And that's how it is in a nutshell. And to do all that, we need a good environment, just like with everything else. And okay, now if you do have questions, right, please feel free to send them by email as well. And if you're watching them on YouTube, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to pop down onto our Facebook page, or you can make a comment on the YouTube videos. We'll be happy to answer those questions. We've got some really great friends, great groups all around the world. So depending on where you are on the planet, let's say you're in Japan, in the Far East, let's say you're in Africa, the Middle East, or Europe, America, North, South, wherever. If you feel like you have a question about the wisdom of Kabbalah and how it can help you to develop your spirituality, don't hesitate, drop us a line. We also have online courses you can do in your own time as well. So it's very flexible. And as you can see, we're a bunch of great guys who are happy to help you along your way. In the meantime, though, I'll see you guys on Lesson 11 next week. Take care. Have a great evening. Have a great week. All the best. need to do, we need to put Facebook, email, contacts, YouTube about page, about the channel. Can you do that? You got the. Can you go in there?
I should be able to. My phone is dead, but Kurt sent me some information because he said he changed the password.
I'll tell Kurt. Okay.
So
the email address.
He sent me the new information though.
Okay.
I think the Abraham book that the guy was asking about is on about Kabbalah.info. I read it before. The book of creation is what he's talking about. Sefer Yitzhara.